Satan, Lucifer, Belial, Leviathan, Samael.
Frater Crow, welcome to the show again.
Thank you, brother. It's really great to be back. I'm honored that you asked me to return.
Yeah, man, I enjoy keeping up with your paranormal activities on Facebook. I think that is just so amazing, and what you're doing is pretty neat. Can you kind of explain to the audience what you do and how you do that?
Absolutely. Thank you first and foremost. Yeah, it's an honor to be able to do what it is that I do. So for the folks listening out there, I run a team called Celestial Oddities Paraseekers, and we travel all over the country to some of the most notorious and known paranormal locations and do research and investigation. Now, I always like to separate the terms used within that community because you have ghost hunters, you have paranormal investigators, and you have paranormal researchers. They are all three distinct in themselves, though a lot of times there is some crossover. My team would fall into the paranormal research slash paranormal investigation. We are not ghost hunters. Ghost hunters are often people who just go for thrills. They're looking to try to prove that the spirits are real. We all understand and know that the spirits are real. So we're trying to see how we can interact with them to different levels, what kind of stimuli causes them to be more active and so forth, and to find out a little bit about their history, who they are, what they are. And we've been fortunate enough to really just go all over the place from, prisons to tuberculosis hospitals to mental asylums, castles, you name it, coal mines. We've been pretty much all over the place.
So, when you first go into one of these facilities, do you get kind of a feeling before you really start delving deep into the presence of spirits in that area? Do you kind of get that feeling, that chill down your spine, so to speak, that, hey, we're in the right place?
Sometimes, I mean, there's very different feelings that you get from the different types of currents and energies that you're coming into contact with. But certainly we like to get a feel for the place itself, kind of ground ourselves to that location, clear our mind, make sure that there's no baggage of anything else being brought into that location. And that's the same reason why most of our investigations, we do not get a historic tour of the place and we don't want to be told the names of the place because I feel that by getting that tour, by being given those names, that can affect the interactions that you have throughout the evening. So we like to go in blind in that case. In most cases, there's a few places we went to that we really wanted to know the history just because of how incredible the place was. But there are locations, and one I would give as an example would be the mysterious Monroe House in Hartford City, Indiana State. The second that we walked into that building, there was an instant, oh, wow, like a presence just sitting on your neck, and you're like, oh my goodness, what is in this building? And very interesting that evening, first time the team had ever been there, first time I'd ever been there. It is known for having darker presence there and being very intense of nature through the spirit box, which is a device that's a radio scanner. It just scans through radio stations at a very, very rapid rate. And then it adds white noise over top of it. And the idea is that they can use blips of sound to then communicate with you and talk through. And it works very, very well. You have to be discerning of what is actual responses and what is your imagination. And then when you get actual responses, what is pertinent to what you are asking and fits and isn't just ironic. If you ask a name and it goes, Drew, and then someone's like, that's Joe. It never said Joe. So you can't fool yourself into thinking that is what you heard. But there are clear cut times where you're like, is there someone here with us? Yes. Who is it? Curtis. Or you get a name that you're like, okay, something's answering. Well, at the mysterious Monroe House, we felt that overwhelming sensation and presence, and we said, we can tell something's here with us right now. What is your name? And the answer came through and said, meat. And we all started laughing and we're like, Meat, huh? Your name's Meat. And it came through instantly and corrected us and says, the meat. And I says, oh, like there's actually something being serious right now. And I said, the meat, what is it you like to do? It instantly came back through and says, eat human flesh. And we were all like, oh, wow, like there's legitimately something coming through that's pretty wild right now. So we continued our investigation throughout the night. We had other activity happen upstairs in what I call the doll room. It's just got dolls all over the walls. We were sitting talking, we got a few other responses, and I says, the meat, is there anything else that you can tell us about yourself? Now, the thing with the spirit box is you might get one answer, two or three, like as far as words. You very, very rarely would ever get a full sentence, let alone a couple full sentences. That is very, very rare. This answer we received in the doll room at the Mysterious Monroe house says, I like to rip the hearts out of little children before I smash them. And it came through as clear as day, as a couple sentences back to back. And the whole team at that point, the demeanor of the team shifted. Everybody kind of looked at me and they're like, oh shit, Crow. Like, did it just say that? I'm like, it just said that. So it obviously changed our idea of the investigation. And for the first time in 23 years of doing paranormal investigation, did I not stay on location when you're allowed to. Some places you can't. You have to leave early in the morning, 3, 4, 5 in the morning. A lot of places do let you sleep there. If they let you sleep there, I have always, over the last 23 years, stayed at the location. This is the first time that I'm like, nah, I'm going to go out and sleep in my car. And my team couldn't believe it. They're like, Crow, you're actually leaving the place. I'm like, yeah, I certainly am. I says, there's something here. I don't like it. I'm going. And sure enough, most of my entire team stayed there. And for the next couple of weeks, we're all afflicted with all kinds of stuff happening to them. And we had to do a lot of spiritual cleansing, a lot of spiritual baths for the team to get whatever was there off. So that was one experience that you could certainly feel that saturation in a negative way. And it correlates with things that have happened in the house. And I'll finish it out with that. That there was a team there years ago, and it was on a TV show at one point in time. This did happen, that they kept getting information to go into the crawl space under the house. So they started crawling around in the crawl space, and their lights kept going out. Well, they took a lantern down there, and as they were crawling around, they found this big mound or hump under the crawl space. And as they started digging, they end up uncovering a full human skeleton under the crawl space of the house, and they have no idea who it was, why it was there. It shouldn't have been. They don't know if it was a murder, if it was buried there before the house was built a long, long time ago. Just a mystery, and that's part of the reason it's the Mysterious Monroe house. So, long story short, that was one of our experiences at a truly profound place.
So are these like killers that lived in the location, or do you think they're drawn to that place by some kind of energy or like energy, and they converge on a location because of maybe the history of the location, but maybe what they did was not associated with it? How do you see that?
I think that some spirits do certainly get drawn back to places that they shared some type of energy with, whether it was joy, whether it was sorrow, pain, fear. I think that there is an attraction to certain locations for spirits because of those reasons. And with there being a body found and this spirit saying that it liked to harm people, maybe that had something to do with the body that was found under the house. Not sure of that. I can't confirm that. But I do think that a lot of spirits just find places. I think that almost like if you look at it like, what am I trying to say here? Like airports that they're traveling through, or they find like accommodations like lodging and they like it. I mean, it goes back to the old stories of the jinn, that a lot of abandoned places in the woods or the desert, you would find jinn spirits in because they liked the fact that they had a structure that they could dwell within, that no human people were coming in and out of. It was abandoned. So whenever you go into that abandoned place, you're now in their home. They claim that as their own at this point, and they take offense to you being there, just like we would if a stranger walked into our house. So I think it is a little mixture of both, that I think a lot of spirits are looking for somewhere because they're wandering this world. So they're looking for somewhere where can we go and kind of be out of the public eye and hide away at. And I think a lot of these abandoned buildings make for that.
So that was kind of the predator part. What about the
Yes.
prey? Do you run across victims that have the restless spirit of what happened to them in that place, or maybe another place, but they're drawn to that?
We do. So one of the most common things we get to come through, as far as at least audible evidence, is asking for help. Now, what's strange about it is it doesn't seem, and I'm trying to make sure I explain this correct. There is residual hauntings where imagine like a prison cell where you just hear the guard walking around the circle of and you hear it all the time. There's no response. It's just always the same thing. There is the residual, but there's also like residual communication where the spirit's just all the time, help me, help, where am I? Help. You get a lot of that, but there's nothing more. What can I help you with? There's nothing else. It's just help again. So are you talking to something intelligent? Or are you just talking to the disembodied echoes of someone once upon a time? And I think we get a lot of that. We have gotten spirits. There is a place called Bill Manor in oh my, in Fairmont, Ohio. Don't quote me on the town. I think it's Fairmont. Um, that is a very old historical town. One of the presidents of the United States, Rutherford B. Hayes, grew up 100 yards from that house, and him and his wife and his children are buried there to this day. This house wasn't anything to do with the president, but it's an old Victorian historical home that at one point in time was an orphanage. And all the more that we knew about this place, that was once upon a time a kid had died in the building. That was it. We didn't ask for any other history. We only heard that because we heard it through the grapevine. Now, when we were there for the first time ever, and we've returned back year after year now because we just love the location, we had a spirit coming through full communication, asking for us to help. And he was asking for us to help solve his murder, so to speak. And he was giving us a ton of different phenomena that was happening, but through the spirit box, through flashlights, through moving objects in the house, was interacting with us on multiple levels to show us like, I am here, I'm really trying to interact with you. And through the spirit box, what we got a lot of is, what is it that you would like us to help you do? Revenge, retribution, judgment. We kept getting these same answers over and over again. So the second night, we stayed there 2 nights. The second night, it started telling us details. We're like, so what happened to you? Long story short, Aleister, is that it told us that he was pushed down the back stairwell, and that's how he died. He was pushed from one of the other orphans in the orphanage. He was pushed down those stairs because there was staff that worked at the building that would take care of the children day and night. And there was a woman, I don't want to call her a nurse because she wasn't a nurse, but she was like a caretaker, a night caretaker. And both the boys had a crush on her. And the one pushed the other one down the stairs and killed him. And it got kind of swept under the rug as a mistake. They actually deemed it a suicide, which is weird because who the hell throws themselves downstairs to kill themselves? And then he went on to tell us the age of the person that did it now, how old he'd be now. It checked out, what state he would live in. And we were trying to get a name from him, but that was the jumbled part. I couldn't understand the name, but we had like several pages of information that we wrote down. So when we went back to the owner of the home the next day, the day we were leaving, he was asking us, what was your evidence? How did things go? Well, we think we solved the murder, at least in the sense of knowing what happened to this kid, the scenario and all this. So we started saying all this, and he says, well, all of that checks out because I didn't tell you where the kid died or how he died. I just told you that there was a kid that died here. He says he was found dead in that back stairwell. And they thought that someone might have pushed him, but no one could ever confirm that, and they deemed it a suicide. And they did have staff that worked here at nighttime, and there was often women that were the ones working here at nighttime watching them. He says everything, he was floored. He's like, I can't believe your team just uncovered this, because he's had dozens and dozens of teams there that have gotten great information. No one's ever gotten that. I mean, he was willing to talk, and he was telling us everything. And he, truth be told, Aleister, he really wanted this person to suffer. I mean, we were like, what do you want? Revenge, judgment. And I was like, and I just plain out asked, I says, are you asking me to go find this man in another state and take him out for you? Yes. I was like, I can't do that for you, buddy. I says, but I can tell your story. I says, at least so it won't go forgotten and think that you did this to yourself. And it seemed that that was acceptable to the spirit, because we've been there a few times since, and he's interacted with us still. And he hasn't asked any more of that. But that first time, he was bearing his heart, so to speak, about what happened to him, because for 100 years, no one knew.
I lived in New Orleans, and there is a feeling in New Orleans, no matter where you go, especially down in the French Quarter, but more especially out in the outlying areas, I guess where the plantation homes were. There were
Okay.
probably a lot of slaves abused in those areas, but you almost feel like someone is watching you, or maybe not someone, but something is watching you no matter where you're at. And you can feel it in certain areas. I was wondering, do you find that there is a common denominator in places that you go? Is there a specific draw that pulls these spirits in, or can they be in a brand new dwelling versus an old dwelling versus a city versus the country? What do you find along those lines?
I think we like to think that they're more active and abandoned in old places, places with a lot of history. And I think in a lot of cases that is true, but I think that we overlook the fact that they can be and are very prevalent in most all areas around us. I always go back to the same thing. There's a lot of people I meet that know how serious and how much we travel and do these investigations. And from time to time, not too often, someone will say, you really believe in that stuff? And I'm like, absolutely. And their rebuttal is usually, why I've never experienced anything. And I always ask that simple question. When is the last time that you went solely by yourself to an old historic abandoned location for a day or two and sat and talked to the spirits for 1 or 2 nights and seen if they answered you? When's the last time you walked miles into the forest at nighttime and sat in the dead of night and talked out loud and said, if there's anything here, come forward and speak with me? Always the answer is, well, I never have. I'm like, well, then shut up. Because if you haven't done it, how would you have it happen? Yes, there's the off chance that something odd will just happen to you. A lot of people have experienced that. But when you put yourself out there, especially when you're turning the cameras and things off and you're there out of sincerity of wanting to connect with the spirits, not showboat them and treat them like circus animals, when you go and say, I'm not trying to capture you, I'm trying to communicate with you. There's a big difference, and they can sense that when you're being true of heart. And I've had that happen at old places. I've had that happen in obscure places, and I've had that happen in brand new, as you said, locations that you wouldn't think, why would it happen here, that no one's ever even lived in this house, or this is the first family? Well, yes, but this land has been walked over for millennia. Everywhere we walk, there's been someone that's died in a very close vicinity at one point or another in history. We might not know it, but pretty much everywhere that's inhabited has had people that have passed. And we have to understand that we can be dealing with a lot of different type of spirits and entities. We can be dealing with the ghosts of the human dead. We can be dealing with animal dead. We can be dealing with elementals and nature spirits. We can be dealing with alienistic intelligences, which is a part of my practice. And we can be dealing with chthonic entities, demons, or angels, and so forth. There's a plethora of different intelligences that are out there that aren't as far away as we tend to think they are in a lot of cases. And sometimes you run into things that are very different. And you're like, I don't think we're talking to a ghost right now. And that happens. And like I said, I think that that can pretty much happen everywhere. And I've shown people that where if I happen to have my equipment with me, we could sit pretty much anywhere. And I turn my spirit box on, set a flashlight down, and say, let's see if something happens tonight. Do you have 20 minutes to spare? Oh yeah, I'm curious. And then we sit and for people who've never experienced anything, I start talking. And then answers that are intelligent start to come through the spirit box. And they're like, how's that happening? Is this real? Is this rigged? I'm like, no, it's not rigged. Do you think that someone could be manipulating it? I'm like, no, it's a radio scanner. It's not an app on your phone. It is a radio box. And then the big one, and I still to this day love it, so simple but so big, is when the flashlight just and turns on by itself. And it's just sitting on the table for 15 minutes and they're questioning whether this is real. And then the flashlight kicks on. Everybody's like, oh, wow. And then I'm like, can you turn that back out? And it doesn't always do it, but from time to time, can you turn that back out? Turns back out. And people are like, oh, goodness, crow. They're like, they're really here right now. I'm like, yeah, they're really here right now. And usually those people are never the same again after that. Once you have that profound experience that opens you up, you can never really shut that door again.
Here in Florida, we have a lot of history, a lot of Indian history, and a lot of massacres and things like that took place. I find that there are areas where I live out in the swamp that you can go and you can just sit and you can't have anything electronic with you. I think that interferes. I think it's all vibrational.
Hmm.
And you can almost hear the echoes on the wind, almost audible. But it's always been my belief that we're contained in three dimensions, and we can't see outside of that dimension. That dimension, other dimensions can see inside to us, but we can't see outside to them because we don't have the right equipment, right?
Correct.
A couple hundred years ago, we didn't know what bacteria was. Why? Because we didn't have the equipment to see it. Same thing with the stars and constellations and things. I think we just don't, as humans, we don't have the right equipment to see through the veil. And I think spirits are around. I know they're around everywhere. And like you say, some are, I feel, some are ancestors, some have your best interest at heart. I can almost hear voices that say, now don't do that. Don't do that. Or do
Yep.
this. And it's not an audible sound. It's more of a thought that comes almost like the connection through telepathy or something like that. Have you done research in Florida?
I have not been down to Florida yet for research. It's something I would love to do. We've gone quite a few states at this point, this year especially. We've been in Illinois, Indiana, Pennsylvania, because that's where we're at, obviously, Ohio, New York, and we are getting ready to head to Vermont in 2 weeks, which that was a bucket list item for me because it's kind of so far out of the way up in that right quarter, or right corner, I should say, that we are very excited to go up there. It's a hell of a drive. It's a 12-hour drive, to get up there, but we got two castles. So we're there for 3 days. The first night's one castle right on the border of New York going into Vermont. And then the following 2 nights we're at Wilson Castle, in Vermont, which is truly a historic, beautiful old castle, mahogany hallways. Looks like you're walking through like a old British castle, and there's like knight suits of armor in there. And it's just truly a profound place. Now, Florida has been one that hasn't happened yet. And I say yet because over time, we are trying to just continue to expand further and further out, hit more locations, because we love it for multiple reasons. We love to travel and make memories and share in that as a family. We love the architecture and the history of it. Some of these buildings walking through Fast forward 20, 30 years from now, if they don't exist anymore, they're never going to exist again. Places like Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in Weston, West Virginia. It is the second largest stone structure in the world next to the Kremlin in Russia. And it is one of the wildest haunted places I've ever been. But when you stand in front of it and look at it, it's so gargantuan that you're like, I can't believe that something like this actually exists. And once it doesn't, it never will again. So definitely think that Florida would have some gems down there. I would love to go down. And I totally know what you're speaking of when it comes to the voices, hearing whispers, because sometimes you can hear that in the room clear as day. And you turn and look at your teammates and you're like, you guys hear that? They're like, I didn't hear anything. And you know for a fact that you just heard it. And that happened. We just recently were at the Jim Jones Boyhood Church, which was kind of a cool one. And we had some fun with it. We drew up a batch of Kool-Aid and the whole team are saluting and drinking a cup of Kool-Aid in the church. But it was a cool church. It was very active. And one of our teammates twice had someone say his name, and he came up to me. He's like, Crow. He's like, twice back there in the corner, I heard someone say, Ryan. He's like, and I kept turning, there was no one there. And I was like, okay. Well, I was sitting there later on and no one was talking. Everyone was looking forward. I was sitting in the furthest pew back. And someone right next to me went, shh, like a very loud, and it was behind me to my right ear. And when I turned around and looked, there was no one there. And I'm like, okay. So in my house has that happen. I have a lot of paranormal activity, I think, because of the rituals I do, even though I cleanse it and do a lot of banishing. It just draws things in, obviously. It's like a nightlight. And it was just the other day, actually, right behind me to my right shoulder, you have a flat screen TV. There is a spirit here that loves watching war movies. I come home all the time or come down to my temple and my flat screen's on. I don't watch hardly any TV ever. And it'll be on and it's always on war movies. And I have Roku, so movies don't just come on. It's not cable. They have to select it. And it's watching Braveheart. It's watching, what else? Gladiator. It watched Hunger Games. I mean, it picks all kinds of obscure things. And the other day, I woke up in the morning before work and I heard a kid whispering 2 feet from my face. And I thought it was one of my children. And when I opened my eyes and looked around, there wasn't. And I heard it clear as day. And I closed my eyes and went back to sleep. I'm like, whatever. Then I heard 2 kids whispering to one another back and forth and giggling. And I opened my eyes again and looked around. There wasn't anything there. So at that point, I got up, started getting ready for work. As I went to come down to my temple, I seen my temple was glowing. And I'm like, I wasn't down there last night. I didn't leave any lights on. As I walked down, the TV was on and the movies were on. And I'm like, okay, there's something here again, watching movies. It's been going on for a couple of years, but I always find that profound whenever you can hear it, because as we discussed, a lot of times others aren't hearing it. It's almost, telepathically that they're whispering to us in our mind.
That's cool.
It's very cool.
Unexplained, the things that you can't really explain and define, those are to me, the most interesting, because like I say, we don't have the equipment as humans to be able to see, what's happening there.
And that reminds me, actually, real quick, the military's original night vision goggles had to be pulled back and remade because they were differently made than they are now. And what was happening is soldiers were seeing things from other dimensions. They were having firefights with creatures that weren't physically there. They were out in the jungle or out in the desert, seeing things running across the fields, and they're shooting at it, and it was going through them and it wasn't hurting them. And they started reporting to their generals and their lieutenants, we're seeing things that we can't explain, sir. We're seeing creatures and beings and things happening, and it's scaring the shit out of us. And we're shooting at them, and they're not going down. And then people started testing that, and they're like, oh no, somehow this is seeing into a spectrum that we're not supposed to see in, or maybe we are, but we never have before. And that's why they pulled back and banned the original night vision goggles. It's very hard to find a pair anymore. Usually if you do, you have to have like special licenses and things. But that was why they changed them, is because that was allowing people to see behind the veil, and they were seeing all kinds of horrific things they weren't prepared to see. I've been wanting to get a pair for myself for years. It just hasn't happened.
How do you go about finding these places? Are these places that you know of, or you learn about, or do you have some kind of research material that provides these different places that you would like to go and visit?
I think it's a little mixture of all. So before I started the team, I did my own solo project called Solitary Alignment. And I played off the whole, being in prison, solitary confinement. I was just thinking like to be in solitary, but not in a cage, rather solitary by yourself in the middle of nowhere. So what I did at that time is I would rent out locations and travel to other states and stay at these places solely by myself. 1 day, 2 day, 3 day. And then eventually I started a team. So a lot of places I knew from just self-discovery from back then. But then over time, as I started meeting other paranormal investigators, as I started coming across other channels for this type of research, I started being made privy to a lot of other names and places. And then it just kind of built from there. And what happens is like that waterfall effect, where we'll go to this new location and they're saying, thank you for coming out and checking out our location, blah, blah, blah. And as we're just talking, they'll say, have you ever heard of such and such? I'm like, no, you need to check it out. I'll give you their number. You can call them. And it seems like word of mouth is a big thing. Now, yes, there are some Facebook pages or internet sites out there that you can find other well-known locations that are big, but there's a lot of ones like we're getting ready to go do at Skeen Manor. I don't know anybody else that's ever been to Skeen Manor. I don't know anybody that's ever talked about Skeen Manor, but it is there. Teams have gone there. I just personally don't know anyone. It's one of those hidden gems that I only heard about because I was booking Wilson Castle, and he mentioned to me, about 40 minutes from here, there's another location. Would you want to check it out? And I'm like, oh, absolutely. He says, let me give you the lady's number. So a lot of times it is that word of mouth, but there's some truly beautiful and amazing places that just aren't on the public radar.
Being around these presences like this and these spirits, do you think it's possible, or have you experienced anything or heard of anything where these spirits can transverse the realm and actually possess a,
I I
a
have.
physical person?
I have. So we had I was on a documentary that another team called Bumpin' the Night Society had put out. It was called oh goodness. Something like Discombobulated in a Small Town Called Bel Air, and they were playing off the whole Will Smith thing with Fresh Prince of Bel Air. And the reason why is because the name of the town's Bel Air, Ohio. Now, in Bel Air, Ohio, there's a place called the Bel Air House. It used to be called the Bel Air Demon House. They changed the name because of the bad publicity they were getting, but it is a demon house. And when I say that, we have to define what demon is. Are we talking the goetic demons? Are we talking the devils that we know from grimoires? Are we talking parasitic entities that are probably negative and adverse to human beings? I think it's more that type of parasitic entity, which you could call a demon because they do not have your best interest in mind. Um, we went there a long time ago with two teams. There was another team from the Pittsburgh area, and my team had come together to do 2 nights as a joint endeavor. And I had only met one or two of the members of that team before. So I was, for the first time, meeting several of them. And first night went pretty good. We had a lot of activity, different things happening. Second, and then we were there all day the next day. And they make for long weekends because most teams that go out, they do one night only. And they do the night. If they stay, and then they wake up and they're gone first thing. It separates a whole different type of people to be there 2, 3 days because there's just endless hours of what do you do to keep yourself occupied. You're sitting and marinating in that spiritual energy. Well, the second night was going pretty decent, and one of the members of the other team just started acting real erratic. He started throwing his equipment into the box. F this place. I'm out of here. I don't even know why we're here right now. There ain't nothing happening here. There ain't no activity happening here. Meanwhile, we'd had activity for almost 2 days at this point, and we're like, what the hell is wrong with him? So I said to him, I was like, hey, man, what's your deal? I'm pissed off right now, man. This place isn't what I thought it would be. And I'm like, I don't understand what you mean, man. We've had activity off the charts. I don't know, man. Maybe it's just me. Well, then he went and sat on the couch. I sat down on the floor with my back to the couch, and we did what's called the Estes method. The Estes method is when you put headphones on, like these ones here, you plug it into the spirit box, and all you hear, you can't hear anybody talking. You just hear the spirit box going through all the radio channels, and you blindfold yourself. So now I'm not seeing anything. I'm not hearing anything but the spirit box. And then you start to just focus on that and kind of lose yourself in that white noise and static. The rest of the team will ask questions of the spirit. And the whole point of it is that you're calling out everything that you clearly hear, and the rest of the team seeing if it correlates with what they're asking, and you have no way of knowing what they're asking. So it's just a way to get more clarified proof. So we were doing that, getting good answers. And you were mentioning like slaves and things of that nature. Well, it was an abolition house at one point in time, and we were getting slaves coming through talking about running and hiding in the tunnels there. It was very interesting. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I vanished, and I was in the attic of the house mentally in vision, and I was standing up there. And there's something very wrong about this attic, and there was something in the corner of the room, and it was almost like I was a fly's perspective on the wall, witnessing this black mass over in the corner. And then the black mass took the shape of a man, and he had a hat on, almost like the legends of the shadow people, the hat man that you'll hear people talk about, but not quite. And he was standing over there, and I was watching him move around, and then he turned and looked directly at where I was and like locked on to me. And just as he did that, a hand grabbed my arm very firmly, scared the shit out of me. I jumped, I yanked my headphones off, pulled my blindfold off. Well, it was so crazy because it coalesced so quickly with him seeing me and then the arm grabbing me. Well, when I pulled the blindfold and the headphones off, I actually was being grabbed by one of the members of the other team. And as I'm like, they know not to bring me out of trance like that. I was kind of pissed. I'm like, why the hell are you grabbing me? I was like, you know not to do that. That's harmful. I was like, what is it? And the whole team standing in front of me, and they all look like deer in headlights. And I'm like, what is going on? And they're pointing behind me. And I'm like, what? And I turn around, and the kid that I was mentioning to you that was all pissed off and slamming his equipment and stuff is sitting on the couch, knees to his chest, fetal position, clutching them, rocking back and forth, just going. And I'm like, what the hell's his problem? And they're like, we don't know. And I started saying his name, and he looked up at me, and I realized right then there, I'm like, oh shit. I says, we need to get him outside now. We need to get him fresh air. We got him outside. And it was the wildest thing, Aleister. I mean, I've seen possession before. With my practice, I take on self-possession quite a bit with entities, but it's a difference between inviting something in and something just taking you. And he was out on the porch, and the other team member had some religious people on it. And the one lady's like, we all need to hold hands and pray to Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. And the second they did this, this man snapped his head up and looked at them. And it was like straight out of a Hollywood movie. He snapped his head up and looked at them. His face started making these crazy movements, and the muscles in his face actually started moving. It was a contortion. And his voice was completely different than his voice. And he's like, it'll fucking do you no good. Spit on her shoes. And he's known this woman his whole life. And she's like, oh no. And I was like, yeah, we got a problem, guys. So we brought him back in, and I performed a full-blown exorcism in the seance room of the Bel Air house. And in the middle of the ritual, I've seen similar, never seen this exact thing. The candles started growing in size. And I know this sounds phantasmagorical. It sounds like a Hollywood movie. I promise you this was witnessed by about 8 or 9 other people, and it made it into a documentary. They grew and started hissing. The candles were making white noise, almost like the spirit box. And we started hearing people talk. Voices were coming out of the hissing of the candles. And then at one point, right at the height of it, whenever I told it, now you leave, this man dropped down on the table. I mean, he fucking face planted his face into this table and dropped. And then he jumped up and started thrashing. Just then, we seen something leave him. And he started bawling his eyes out. And he looked over right where we watched this thing go to. And he started crying, saying, "That's no little girl. That's no little girl." And the reason he said that is there's supposed to be a girl that lives in this house named Emily, this ghost. And she all the time comes through and she's always like, "Help me. Won't you please help me?" And it's not a little girl. And whenever it snapped out and left him, he literally snapped right over to where this thing went to. And he was screaming, "That's no little girl," and started bawling. And we visibly seen this thing go up the stairwell and stop. And the whole stairwell swelled with this darkness. And then it went up and vanished. And like I said, we've went back a couple of times since and had other incidences, but different pieces of that, different members of the two teams' accounts all made it into this documentary that was actually released in movie theaters, which was pretty cool. But that was one of those cases where we dealt with something truly different that can't quite be explained as far as possession goes. And there's been some others, but that was a profound one.
Do you feel that these spirits that you encounter, are they destined to roam the earth forever? Or do they get dispositioned to the other realms? Or what are your thoughts on that?
It depends on how they're being worked with. I think that as I talk about, we have a physical body, we have a soul, and we have a spirit. The spirit is that God force energy, that source, that's within us, that spark that creates all of us, whatever you want to call it. Our soul is that psyche. And that's really what it means, is psyche. And the psyche is all of these different pieces that we've gathered up to make the idea of who we think we are. And I think that we hold so tightly to that when we die, that remains a lot of times. The true energy behind you goes and does its own thing. Energy never dies. It's just transmuted into something else. So your body falls, your spirit moves on. But this egoic personality still exists for at least some time, and sometimes very long periods of time. And that's why we get those things of "Help me, where am I?" It's like it doesn't understand my body's not here. My true generative source isn't here. It's gone. What am I? I'm just roaming around. It seems like it's almost an echo, like I mentioned earlier, like it's an imprinted echo on the fabric of our reality that they roam around for a while. And I think it really takes place a lot when there's sudden deaths. So if you're in a car accident, and this goes back to like a lot of old esoteric belief, that when someone died, they covered the mirrors and they gave you 3 days for the spirit to truly leave the body. There's a belief that there's a gray ethereal cord that connects your ethereal double, your spirit, to your body. And over 3 days' time, it dissipates and then your body floats away and it's gone, or your spirit does rather. And that's how it's naturally supposed to happen. And then you don't get trapped because, one, you're not trapped in a mirror, which can be a portal. And two, it's had time to kind of come to terms with what happened. But in the case of a murder or an accident, and you're alive 1 second and then you're dead, there was no time for you to understand what happened. It just was severed instantly. So now the spirit's floating around. It's like, I don't understand what's happening. So I think you can have a little bit of both. And it gets hard to categorize because you could say, well, then what about ancestral veneration? You're working with your ancestors. They're coming through. They're giving you intelligent answers, but they're not here on a daily basis haunting your house or things like that. They're come when you call them, just like a regular spirit in ceremony. Mm-hmm. That's tricky to decipher how that works, how you can have some spirits that only come when you call them, even in the category of human dead, and others that seem to roam. I think a lot of the roamers are truly revenants, truly shades. They're just these things that are left to wonder here. And I think eventually they do dissipate. Some of them start to become vampiric to stay alive because I think they start to feel themselves wither. So they do feed off of emotion. They feed off of fear and sorrow. That's why they do ask a lot of times, "Help me," or they take on the image of children a lot of times. It's very common to come across little girls wanting your help, both little girls and little boys, but a lot of times little girls, it seems more than not. And they're always like, please help me, or come here, won't you help me? So many times have we come across that. And sometimes it might be little kids that passed. I think a lot of times it isn't. They're taking on a form and a voice that they know you are going to be vested in, and you're giving energy to that. And then they're feeding off that to keep themselves going, because just like most human beings, we're afraid to die, right? Well, they're sitting there thinking, or standing there thinking, I don't want to go away. I don't know what's going on right now, but I know that I need to feed or I will wither away. And what that can turn into over time is a sinister spirit that starts to feed more and more and become something else. And I think that there's this other category, not to go too crazy with it, but I think that these parasitic entities can sometimes latch on to the remnants of a personality left behind and then ride it like a horse. What I mean by that is, I think that if your spirit passed and is wandering around and it happens to come into contact with this parasitic dimensional being, they can actually latch onto the spirit. So a spirit latching onto another one and using that as its mouthpiece. So it talks to people and it uses it. And it's like, sure, come in this back room. I'll give you all the flashlights and energy you want. Come on in. And then it does drink from you, and it keeps getting stronger and stronger. And we have evidence of this in some of our investigations, that we've called out spirits and say, I know damn well this isn't who you say you are. You're a being trying to drink our energy, aren't you? And we've had spirits literally start laughing over the spirit box. And we're like, yeah, we caught you. And we've had literally spirits go, well, I tried. You know what I mean? Like comically almost, like, well, I tried. We're like, yeah, you tried, buddy. It starts to really get heady because of the types of things that are out there that we just don't think about.
We see a lot of increase nowadays in mental illness and things like that. Now, whether it's because there are more diagnoses, or maybe it's just the chemicals in our environment and things like that, chemical imbalances, who knows? But what are your thoughts? Do you think that spirits can have a strong influence and attach to a person and actually drive them mad, so to speak?
I do. I think that we are being influenced by spirits on a daily basis, unaware of it, because we have to remember that we are simply a vehicle that a spirit is driving. So we are a spirit. This body, so many people mistake their selves for their body. Your body is just a vehicle. It's just a car. Sure, you're attached to it pretty heavily right now, but you were here before that body existed, and you'll be here after that body drops. It is simply your avatar, your vessel. But just like you are a spirit that has inhabited this body, you are then influenced by spirits all around you in one way or another. And one of the reasons I say this, or I can prove this to people, think about a time, it's something I teach all my students, that mindfulness. Take a step outside yourself. Witness yourself doing the things that you do throughout your day from an outside perspective. And the reason I say that, you'll start to see funny things that you do that you didn't realize you do. And you're like, wow, that's weird. That doesn't seem like me. For example, think about a time that something so minute and small happened, but you became enraged over it. And after the fact, you're like, why did I just get so mad about that? That's strange. Like, for example, like you just cleaned something in the room, and then your kid went in there and they pulled a couple toys out, and then you go back in and the toys are out. And normally it would just be like, come on, guys, like, can you please pick that up? Like, I just cleaned it. But there's times where all of a sudden you're enraged and you're like walking out of the room biting your lip because you're like wanting to punch a hole in the wall. And then you catch yourself, especially when you do this exercise of mindfulness more, and say, wait a second, I just became like redlined, wanted to like lose my shit over 2-3 toys. That wasn't me. I would never get that angry. And then you're like, something was just messing with me. And as you start to do that more and more throughout your day, as you're traveling around to work, on the road, especially when you're in public circumstances with a lot of people around, you start to realize and actually see, oh, wow, there's something around me influencing me right now. So I think that is a big part of it, that we are influenced in a lot of different ways. Now, these spirits will change the way that we think if we don't do our due diligence to keep them away. I think that there is a lot of chemicals in our food, our water, and our air. I think that that certainly aids to it. I think that all of the conflict and chaos and politics and religion and the world and all those things, they aid, that insanity that we can come across. Social media is a big culprit of it. There's so much pressure on people these days to like everyone wants to be something, right? You know what I mean? You go back 30 years ago, no one gave a shit, but now it's like everybody wants to be a TikTok star or whatever these platforms are.
Influencer,
Yeah,
yeah.
everybody wants to be an influencer, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I tell people, and some people tell me I am. I'm like, no, I'm not. And I don't want to be. This was never my idea to be, someone who did a radio show and did all the stuff that I do. I just felt like I had to give back. Never was for fame or anything, but I think that all of those things play a part in it. But even a lot of practitioners within the occult, I talk to them about cleansing. So like though I work with 20 different spirits the last, half a year. Well, that's wonderful. And I'm starting to have a lot of things happen in my life. And I'm like, okay, well, when's the last time you did a banishing? When's the last time you did a fumigation and herbal bath? And actually, I'm not talking like some TikTok bot shit. I'm not talking Amazon. I'm saying, when's the last time you went and picked some fresh herbs that are known to aid in this? You emaciated them and grounded them up, and you made your own spiritual bath and fumigations and fumigated yourself, your family, your house, your home, all of that. Well, I've never done that. I'm like, so yeah, you're calling in a lot of energies who bring what I have termed metaphysical condensation. That's when a spirit comes in. If you call in Belial, Belial is going to come, Belial is going to leave, right? But Belial has left behind metaphysical condensation on your altar, on your tools, on your temple. And if you don't do anything then to get rid of that, and then you call in Asmodai, then Asmodai is coming, yes. But Asmodai it's like a chemistry set. You're using the same beaker of the last experiment for the new experiment, and the experiment might still work, but now you got residue from something else, and we don't know exactly what that experiment's going to do now because it isn't the 100% pure Asmodai. It's Asmodai and other, and you get a different reaction. And I think that that's what happens for a lot of people just in everyday life who maybe are not even involved in the paranormal or the occult. They don't do their due diligence. I think everyone should take time for several things of maintenance. We brush our teeth, we go to the bathroom, we shower. But how often do you do spiritual cleansing? How often do you do these things? And an everyday person, well, I never do. I'm not involved in those type of things. Yes, you are. Every single one of us are involved in a spiritual world every single day, and you do nothing to mitigate that. And if that's like pretty much like walking through dirty water day after day after day. First couple days you might not stink, but you're probably going to. Couple weeks in without a bath, everyone's gonna be like, "Damn, dude, you stink." Yeah, because you never washed the scuzz off, and that is exactly what's happening in the spiritual world, especially guys listening out there, guys and gals. If you are doing occult practices, if you're doing the paranormal and you don't have some type of etiquette for cleansing, you are harming yourself. You're harming those around you. You're harming your friends and your family, and you're harming your practice. I promise you that if you find a cleanliness to your practice, we'll go back to some or some biblical verses. Cleanliness is godliness, right? Well, there's a reason for that, because as you are cleaner, you are more in contact with source, more in contact with the spirits that you're working with. And I think that's a way of, if done properly, we would see a lot less mental illness and mental instability out there.
If someone's listening or watching this and they feel that they're maybe under the influence, maybe some things haven't been going right, maybe they're not feeling 100% mentally, what are some things that they can do as a layman, not being educated or trained on any of these things? What would you recommend? Where would they start?
Three components that I would say are very important for people to do. One is floor washes. You can do different herbal floor washes that I would say 2 times a year would be advisable. Some people only do it like spring cleaning. I know some folks that do it once a year, but that is taking from the farthest point back of your house and using a liquid blend, almost like you're mopping, and you are using, and you can dump it into a mop bucket, but it now has the elements of these spiritual plant allies. And as you can tell behind me with my flag with the mushrooms and things, and all over my temple, I work a lot with plants. And you will then mop from the furthest point back of your house to the front out the door, each room out the door. And you are cleansing the floor and wiping down the walls, because that metaphysical condensation now, even if you're doing a spiritual banishing, like the lesser banishing of the pentagram, the star ruby, any of these type of things, that's great. But washing the actual physical vessel of the temple in the home, that's important. So that would be one thing. The second would be the fumigations that I added. When I do my fumigations, my family sometimes bitches a little bit about it, because I'm walking around room to room and I'm smoking that room out. I mean, it's like we're in the middle of like a fire, and then I usually will get it all, lofted out of the house. But then I walk around my children and my wife, and I make them stand there while I fumigate around them, and I say the prayers that I use. I say the spiritual blessings, and they just got to kind of deal with it. My wife's not into spirituality; she doesn't do occult practices, but she understands the necessity of what I do and why I do it and how I keep our family safe. And that's just kind of a given that we have to do. So fumigations are important, because now you've scrubbed the walls, you scrubbed the floors, you relinquished any of that in the house. Now you're getting the air, anything in between those walls. And then next would be your own spiritual bath, because not only does that clean off your skin after you've washed the floors and walls and lofted the smoke, now you want to get a bath anyway. Well, now you're able to sit down and lounge in that liquid and let it absorb in and scrub in. And there's so many different concoctions. If anybody's out there interested, I can give you guys a few. It'd be a lot to go over tonight, but I do have some different ones I could send to you. Something as simple as rue, bay leaves, and basil. You can mix it with a nice alcohol base. So I use cachaça or rum, and you can put it in and steep it. You emaciate the plants, let it sit for a couple days, and then strain out the plant material. Or I a lot of times actually leave it in. Some people don't like to scrub plants into them. I actually like to have the chunks of plant, and I use it as a washcloth almost and grind it into my skin. And guys, this isn't something, if you were to go by my advice, this isn't something you only do a couple times a year. I do a spiritual bath 3 times a week, every single week. In fact, I did one yesterday. I do fumigations only once to twice a month, and floor washes twice a year. So it's not like it's incredibly insane, but the most important to me is the spirit baths or showers. And it's as easy as having an eyedropper bottle, big one, that is black so that it keeps the light out. And then you can dump it down into your washcloth with your soap and just scrub like you would normally scrub. It's nothing different than your normal daily routines. It's just a matter of adding it to your routine, which it should be a part of. And then there's other things like prayer. A lot of times people scoff at prayer. I'm not talking prayers in the case of Christianity. I'm talking just prayer. Esoteric prayer and praying to my spirits is a huge part of the Coterie of Semille's practice. And by being able to do prayer, meditation, mantras, mudras, and breath exercises, that's another way of keeping your vessel clean, balanced, and in equilibrium. And you will eliminate a lot of spiritual affliction or problems, both larger scale that would be noticeable to everyone, and those minute cases where no one even seems to notice, but there's something jacking with you and you don't even know it's there. They won't mess with you. They want to cling on to something easily clingable. They look at you as something, well, damn, that would be a lot to penetrate that person. I'll find someone else. And that's the whole point. You are making it so that you don't have an environment that they want to thrive in.
I like to do the same thing. I have a huge basil tree.
Okay.
It's not a bush. It's a tree. I've let it grow over the years, and it's probably about 6 feet now.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
And I'll go and pick the leaves off of that and make a tincture,
Yep.
and then use Florida water with
Florida water
that.
is wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm a big
So
person of Florida. I love it.
yeah. So I know what you mean. Sometimes just using that and coming out of that feels so refreshing, and you know it has to be cleansing off a lot of negative energy and things like that.
And that's it. Sometimes you step out of the bath or out of the shower and you actually feel very different. You're like, oh wow, like especially if you haven't done it in a while, you're like, I feel different right now than I did 10 minutes ago. That's insane. And it's because, yeah, you just caused a bunch of things that were clinging on to you to say, oh no, and they let go. And it's funny to say that, but it's true, guys. And there's other things that there's something that I would not suggest to the beginner. There's something called sananga. I'm a big advocate for sananga. Sananga is a liquid made out of different ashes and plant barks in the Amazon. It is a plant ally. It is like the devil pissed in your eyes. When you put it in, it burns like you were sprayed with bear mace. But it is one of the most amazing plant allies you could ever use. As you drip it in, you do not scream, you do not whine, you do not cry. You take it like a goddamn man or woman and just say, and you breathe in the nose and you let it out. And for about 5 minutes, you feel this burn in your eyes like you've never felt before. And it does something to your spirit. You feel the energy flip through your chakral system, your pineal and endocrine system. It goes down your spine, and then you actually feel energy start shooting out of the tips of your fingers as you're sitting in darkness. And you just keep breathing. And then when you're done and you stand up, you feel so aligned, so good, and so cleansed. And you're like, I'm ready to work. And then when you lay down that first time you ever do it, you're going to sleep like a baby, because it'll tear any parasites off of you. But I will warn you guys, it is extreme.
You've done work with mushrooms,
Yes.
and I wanted to ask about what are your thoughts of psychedelics and ritual? How do you see that? And if you've done that, what have the results been? Do you think it's a positive or a negative?
I think it's going to depend on the person's discipline, mental, what would the word I want to be? Mental clarity and so forth. Because if anybody is using these entheogens or plant allies as a drug, don't bring it into your ritual. I don't ever eat mushrooms or anything like that as far as a party drug. It's not a drug to me. It isn't. It's a true entheogen. It's something to be used to come into contact with spirits or to the God force energy. If you are strong and do those things that I mentioned earlier, if you're cleaning your body, your temple, the air, all of these things, and you have a very disciplined practice. And when I say that, folks, I don't mean you're doing ritual 2, 3 times a month. I'm talking this is a part of your everyday life. In a 30-day span, I do about 28 rituals. I do one Monday through Friday every morning. I do Monday and Friday evenings for my Kimbanda work. I do Tuesday and Wednesdays for two other things that I do, and Saturday I do as well. So the only day of the week I'm not doing ritual is Sunday. Um, Now, if you have a disciplined practice, you find that equilibrium within yourself, you're a lot more of a proper vessel to take on the influences of these entheogens. Because once again, you're not doing it to get high. You're doing it to open the doors of perception. And I think it was Aldous Huxley wrote a book years ago called Doors of Perception, which is about using entheogens to open up to higher levels of consciousness. And it'll do just that if done properly. But you also have to know yourself and know your brain. Can you handle this? And if you have mental illness, I do not suggest in any case to take them. And if you are a beginner, I do not suggest you take it, or at least don't ever take it on your own. Have a guardian or watcher with you to make sure you're okay. But you shouldn't be taking huge quantities. If you're using entheogens, it should be just enough to push you past the threshold, not enough to blast you to the moon, but not so little that you don't feel it. You have to be a scientist on this shit and get it just right. But as you asked, Aleister, I think if used properly, it is all of the difference in the world. I will say, first and foremost, for myself, working Klipothic magic, I know a lot of people write books about the Klipoth. I know a lot of people write books about the Sitrakra and working with these spirits, and a lot of them do so in a way that's different than how I understand it, different than how I work it. And I'm not saying anyone's wrong. When I'm working with these spirits, I have mentioned before the spirits of the Sitra Akrian tree is not the spirits of the Lemegeten. When you're working with Asmodeus of the Goetia, that is not the Asmodeus you're working with in the Sitra Achra. They might share the same name. They are not the same being. They are very different than one another. And the ones of the Sitra Achra are very alien in nature. And when I say alien, I mean in the truest sense of the way they are alien. And the way that we at the Coterie of Samil do our Klipothic workings, it's a very long preparatory step. It is a ton of reading, a ton of research all throughout the month. And what we do is 1 to 2 months with each tunnel or each sphere of klifa of the Sitra Achra. And you are thinking about that spirit all day long. You are doing hundreds and hundreds of repetitions of that spirit's N in mantra throughout the day, every day, straight. You can't miss. If you miss, there are repercussions in my cult for that. If you miss, you are expected to take several hundred lashes from the whip to yourself. I'm not doing it. You do it to yourself. The self-flagellation is a part of the practice that I will not be weak. I will not fail, because if I fail, I'm only failing myself. And by dedicating this pain, this blood, this sweat, this tears to this practice, you become so invested and reach a different level of dedication in your practice. And when you do these rites properly in the way that we have formatted them to work with the Citracrian spirits, and then you add that entheogenic plant ally, there's something that happens. And some people are naysayers. Some people say, oh, you're just tripping, or oh, you're just imagining, oh, it's just hallucinations. No, I've taken it recreationally in the past many, many times. And then these days I don't. I only take it in that manner. It's a very different thing. As you're vibrating those ends, as you're really getting into it, and during my Citra Achra rituals, I use the whip even though I haven't failed once that month. I several hundred lashes, because something about the pain and the dedication, I'm whipping myself to the point where I'm shaking and I'm staring at that sigil and I'm pouring everything I have into that sigil and I'm repeating that vibration over and over and over again, and I'm invoking them and I'm telling them, come, come, and I'm bringing them. There's a point where a switch flicks and consciousness launches. And when it does, there's no way of explaining that, guys. And I'm not saying it's for everyone, because I will first and foremost tell you it is not. There's a difference between calling a spirit down into your chamber and working with it on a face-to-face level, so to speak, through a scrying mirror, through smoke, through some type of medium. There's a difference where you're launching your consciousness into its world. And that's what this is. In a lot of these cases, you're not in your temple anymore. You're actually casting your consciousness into another dimension. And I've seen myself land in places that is absolutely unexplainable. It is not even the regular thought of astral travel that most people mention. It is a deeper degree of astral travel where you are seeing landscapes. It's almost similar to when people talk about using DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and they say about seeing the clockwork elves and seeing landscapes and castles, and you see 10 different people that don't know each other. They all do it, and they're all talking about the same places and same things. You're like, well, how's that possible? Because, folks, there are landscapes out there. Don't think of these spirits as just something that appear when we invoke them. They come out of us, and they're all parts of our mind or our psychology. No, they're very real. They do exist outside of us, though they are tethered to us. And they come from landscapes that are alien and foreign to us that we can't understand. But through the right, proper methods, you can put yourself there. But, and as the last part I'll say on it, it is extremely, extremely dangerous. Working with the Citra Achra and Klipoth in general is a dangerous work, more so than a lot of other forms of diabolism. Doing it with the plant ally can help. It can take you there. It can do a lot of things for you, but it can increase heavily the chance of you snapping and going insane. And I know a lot of people who have lost their minds and gone full batshit crazy. I know people that have taken their own lives. I know people that have snapped and killed other people, and maybe not that same night, but after doing this type of work for a while, they became violent. They became different. Something was wrong about them, because once again, as much as you're opening yourself up to the doors of perception and launching, you're opening yourself up in those doors for something to come in, and it might be a little hard to get rid of it, especially some of them are very, very potent and powerful. So you have to be disciplined. You have to know thyself, and you have to have that cleansing protocol, or you will be casting yourself into the fire and you will get burned.
That is the best explanation I've ever heard
Thank you.
on that. Quite honestly, that is well articulated. Thank you for that.
No, thank you, brother. I'm very passionate about what we do at the Coterie, and I like to explain it. And I make sure I always put those caveats on it because so many people come into the left-hand path. So many people come into diabolism and Satanism, and they're very excited. It's exciting. And they want to explore the worlds beyond. They want to peek behind the veil. But there is also a protocol to doing it. You can't just jump in because you get fucked up. And I mean, you have to do it the proper way. And the problem is now with social media and with so many authors out there and so many books coming out, it can have a tendency to glorify things that maybe shouldn't be glorified yet. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a lot of books about the Citra Chakra, but now if you go back 10 years ago, there was almost none. You could find one or two. And then now all of a sudden now there's like, 300, and it's like, holy shit, like there's a lot of material on this. And a lot of them make it seem so simple. Oh yeah, do this, this, and this, and you'll come into contact with these spirits. And it's like, I think that's the wrong approach. If you want to go a Solomonic or Goetian or satanic route of conjuring spirits the way we all know how to do, that is okay. And I think for a while that should be how you do it. But don't be year one trying to do the Citra Chakra or the Klipothic spirits, because once again, people are glitz and glamorizing it and making it sound easy and making it sound like it's just a random Tuesday. No, guys, this is something different. And that's what distinguishes a lot of fictional authors in the occult right now to true practitioners. And I stress that a lot, is there is a lot of these folks, guys, that are listening out there that are just writing books. And there's a lot of these folks just writing AI books. And they're not actually practicing the shit that they're doing. And for us that take this very, very seriously and make this not just a hobby, this is our life. I bleed this shit. There's a big difference. And for those that are truly traveling the path of the Citra Chakra, it is deadly, like I said. And I just want to give one example, if I may, Aleister, that there was a ritual that I did, and I'm not embarrassed to say this, but you would think that I would be. I was working with the spirits one night, and I was in the middle of my prayers for this specific Klifa. And then I got picked up off the ground. And I've never had this happen in any paranormal investigation, any spiritual ritual that I've ever done. Nothing has ever I've been practicing now for 23 years. Nothing has ever done this. I got picked up off the ground as if I was levitating and fucking power bombed into the floor of my chamber. And as I went to get back up, something slammed me down onto the table. And then it had its way with me in a brutal, brutal fashion. And like I said, I am only being so transparent to all you. And I know some people might think this is funny. People joke about it. People probably make memes. I don't give a shit because I have nothing to hide. I live and breathe my practice. I had something unseen that I could not perceive with my vision forcibly throwing me around a room and beat the shit out of me. And what is very, very interesting about this is we time a lot of our cult rituals that if we can't be together in person doing it, we'll all do it at the same time in other locations. One of the other members, unbeknownst to me at the time, had the same thing happen to her. And we were both not okay. Like the next day when we talked to each other, we were fucked up and we started to say like what happened without telling each other. And we like to see our notes. So we wrote notes to like each other, what happened to us, and then exchanged them. So we weren't just telling stories and then someone repeated it. And we were both mind blown when we read the fact that we both were brutally taken by a spirit that same night, same time, same ritual. And I can't begin to tell you how dangerous that is, guys. There was one point where I laid on the floor of my temple and I was like trying to breathe. And I actually looked up to the ceiling of my temple and I says, I'm going to die tonight. I was like, my wife and kids are going to find me down here. This is the way I'm going to go. I'm like, what a wild ride that it all ends here tonight. I'm dying. I was assured that I'm dying. Like, I was so hurt, so injured. It, it went on for, I don't know, 2.5 hours of being thrown around and taken. It was almost like as a grown man took me. That's what was happening. And it was wild to find out that she went through the exact same thing at the exact same time. And while you think this would scare us away from this working, I don't think it was done in maliciousness, even though that sounds crazy to say. These spirits don't think like we do. They don't work like we do. They are energies and they do what is in their nature to do. And some of them are brutal and they bring brutality. But through that brutality and that, it was almost like a test. Tap the fuck out. You tap out, this all stops. And I wouldn't tap out. And I even later, and I was like, I'm going to die here tonight. And I accepted it. I'm like, this is it. And I closed my eyes and pretty much said, if this is how I die, this is how I die. And it wasn't too long after that, although it still was like another half an hour or so, that it stopped. And then after that, all kinds of things started happening. The synchronicities of a lot of different things started connecting. Downloads started happening. And you'll find more often than not, that's how it happens. Some of them are gentle with you. Some of them are a little stern and bring the rod in a little bit. And then some of them just beat the shit out of you like a fucking horrible stepdad. You know what I mean? Like they don't spare the rod. So this is long-winded to say, guys, understand the seriousness of this. This isn't just calling in a spirit and saying, I felt the atmosphere in the room change. No, this is calling in something that might just fucking suplex you through a table. Obviously, I'm joking when I say that, but it could do something that you're like, oh my God, what the hell just happened? I just got slammed through a table. It's very, 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 very real.
I have a lot of people contact me and ask me about sacrifice. And they may have read a book, they may have heard, some kind of pulp fiction about, sacrifices of animals or humans or what have you. And I have to explain to them that the sacrifice is inward. Like, for instance, fasting is a
Yep.
sacrifice. If it
100%.
doesn't mean something to you as the practitioner, it does no good. If you harm another individual or a small creature or something like that, you're not getting anything from that. The energy itself comes from the sacrifice of the self because you prove yourself, just as the Indians did millennia ago. The sacrifice that is made internally is what furthers, that's what shows the spirits, and in our case, Satanas, that we're serious about the endeavor that we're seeking. How do you feel about sacrifice in your practice, and how does it fit in? Does it even fit in with your normal practice?
It does, and that's a big part. So, for example, with the self-flagellation, for those folks that might not be familiar with that term, which is self-punishment, that is part of the sacrifice. Is that every night I'm expected to repeat several hundred ends of this spirit. We set numbers. If you don't do it or you fall short of that, that's failure, and we don't accept failure in the coterie. So, if you fell, then you are expected the next day to take 300 lashes, as I mentioned earlier. And you're supposed to continue to repeat the end, and then you continue to go. And I mean, as you're doing it, you have to keep concentration on the ends because it stings so bad that you're wanting to break concentration, and you can't. You have to stay focused and stare at that spirit's end. And you pour that pain out and tell that spirit, I'm sorry I failed you. I'm sorry that I was weak. I will not be weak again. And you continue to say that end. And that is that sacrifice to say, I am dedicated to this practice. And at times, if I fail, I will own up to it and I will pay in pain and blood for this practice. I am all in. This is not a hobby, as I said. So that is a huge part of our practice. Prayers People would think prayers are not sacrifice. They'd say, what do you mean? Prayers are sacrifice because that is time, and time that you're giving up from your family, from sitting on a couch and watching TV, from going out and doing something. That is a sacrifice in its own way, but it is also sacrifice for the amount of tension that you need to pray. We do serpentine prayers because have a very serpentine diabolism where we worship snakes. And there is an endless amount of prayers. Every morning, I say 35 minutes of prayers. Every lunch, I do a half an hour of prayers. And every night before bed, I do a half an hour of prayers. That's just one element of sacrifice, because you look at any given day and say, wait a second, you're doing an hour and a half of just prayers. That's not counting my hour Hecatian morning ritual. There's 2 hours a day. On Mondays and Fridays, I do 2-hour Kimbanda rituals. So you can look at a Monday, for example, and say, holy shit, you did 4 hours of ritual today. Yes. And I know what a lot of you out there are thinking. I don't have enough time in a day to give up to do that. Bullshit. I run 5 radio shows. I run a cult. I run a paranormal team. I belong to several other cults. I have 2 children, a wife, a home, a career. You can do it. I get up at 5 a.m., actually technically 4:45, but by 5 a.m. I'm in my temple. I don't have to get up for work till 7. I get up at 5 because I'm stretching, doing breath exercises, and lifting. Straight into Hecatian ritual, meditation, prayers. Then I wake my children up for the day and I get my process going. That night before I go to bed, I want to lay down so much. I'm so goddamn tired, right? Get your fucking ass down in the temple and you say your prayers and your mantras, and then you can go to bed. Or if you have a night of ritual, you do your ritual. It is sacrifice. It is discipline to a level that most people I meet when they hear our regimen are like, you guys are fucking insane. We are. We could be considered extremists to some, but I don't consider it extremist. I consider it to the necessities that you need to break beyond the plateau of what most cap out at, because there's different levels of interconnectedness and each one has its own amazing aspects to it. But there is a cap about here where no matter what levels you are under here, you can go higher and higher and they're amazing. But if you push yourself just hard enough, you'll pop through that fucking firmament, through that bubble. And there's an ocean up there that very few explore. And when you get up there, it's a real ball game. And I think that that's a part of sacrifice. Now, one comment I will make, and I'll wrap this part out, is in most of my practices, I would tell you that yes, actual sacrifice is not needed. And in the case of diabolism, and some of my other practices that I'm involved in, if there is blood, it's your own, obviously. Now, I am involved in some ATR religions, and they often get a bad rap because from first time Christians stepped foot in Africa, they condemned, the Africans and all of their religions as devil worshipers, and that everything that they were doing was horrible and evil. And they didn't understand their culture. And we have to understand that different cultures in different places of the world look at things very differently. And while animal sacrifice is very grotesque to Americans and something that a lot of people were repulsed at, it is also something that's been being practiced since the beginning of time and is still practiced by many, many cultures all over the world. And the way that I justify in the cases that this were to be done is as follows. You have, for the 99% of the people listening right now, you have no problem going to the store and picking up a pack of hamburger, a pack of steaks, a pack of chicken, right? You come home, you grill it up, you watch the football game, you watch TV, you do whatever you're doing, right? You eat it, and very rarely do you even think about the animal. You just pick up a chicken sandwich, you eat it, you just cut your steak, you eat it. You don't really even think anymore because you become so diluted to the fact that you eat meat every day that you don't even think of the life that was lost for it. But the first time you would hear, oh my goodness, Crow sacrificed an animal in his ritual, you're repulsed and like wanting to spit in my face. I'm like, motherfucker, you just ate a steak 20 minutes ago. And the thing is if you're torturing an animal, absolutely. But when you're taking time to wash that animal's feet, its snout or its beak, When you're putting your forehead to forehead and you're petting it and you're praying over it and you're thanking it and you're rejoicing it and you're throwing a celebration for that animal and treating that barnyard animal better than it has ever been treated in its life and better than any one of those slaughterhouse animals that you're eating on your dinner table, you're rejoicing it, then when it is taken care of and it is dispatched as quickly and as painlessly as possible. And then it is then often communally eaten amongst the tribe or the group. And it still is the same as you eating it at your dinner table. The only difference is it was treated better. And the other difference is that the blood actually does make a difference. Now, not in all practices. Once again, we have to understand that there is a lot of different types of spirits. And when you're working something like Palamayombe, when you're working something like Kimbanda or Umbanda or Ifa, Vodou, when you're working different aspects, these spirits are different. The Loa, the Eshus and Pombagiras, they are very different spirits than the demons and angels and elementals and ghosts. And they sometimes require different things. But there's also the alchemical or chemical side behind it. Blood is magnetic. Semen and vaginal fluid is electric. These two can have very profound changes with spirits if you use them. But once again, just as the hallucinogens or the entheogens should never, 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 never be attempted by a beginner. Blood sacrifice should not be attempted by hardly anybody unless you're in the right practice, unless you have been taught by a master who has taught you from the ground up. And it should only be used in the right circumstances. And for most people listening right now, you're going to fall into the satanic category, the Diabolist category, the pagan category. And 95% of the chances are you're never going to need to worry about this. But there are faiths. I'm an initiated Kimbandero of Kimbanda. There is a heavy use of blood there, but it's not just murder everything. No, not at all. It is a very beautiful and respectful act when it happens, and it only needs to happen at very specific times. And I always make sure I set it out there, not to get hate from anybody, because I know there are people that adamantly do not agree with that, but that is okay, because once again, it goes by cultural understanding. And if you lived somewhere else in your life, grew up, there's a good chance you would think very differently than Americans do. But once again, I want you to think about what I just said next time you're eating your steak or hamburger, because that animal was just pushed into a building, hooked to a machine, flipped upside down, throat slit, drained, dropped into a machine, ground into meat. There was no love. There was no care. It had a shitty life trapped in a cage. No one was bathing it, kissing it, singing to it, praising it, and then celebrating its life and thanking it for its sacrifice. So there is reasons that can be powerful, but most of the time it sacrifices, Aleister said, of self, of your time, of fasting and filling your stomach, grumbling, and you're like, man, am I hungry? No, suffer for your spirits. I'm big on that. Suffer for your practice, suffer for your spirits, because in that suffering, you will find bliss whenever you're working with them.
What's the best way to get in touch with you, Crow?
Few different ways. I have the Frater Crow Facebook page, which is my personal page, and I'm going to say something that's going to sound crazy to anybody who hosts all these shows and do all the things I do. Don't add me. I won't accept it. People always laugh and hey, they're like, did you just say that? Yes, I said it. I get added probably by 100 people a week, and I accept maybe one. I have pages to follow. Follow Knights of the Nephilim Facebook page. Follow Celestial Oddities Radio or Celestial Oddities Paraseekers page. Follow the Coterie of Samil Facebook page or my Knights of the Nephilim YouTube. Follow Darkness and Divination Frater Crow Instagram page. Those are the best ways to contact me. I do have the Frater Crow personal, but unless we have a reason to be personally friends, I like to keep personal and business separate. I am involved in a lot of different things. Doesn't mean I want you in part of my daily life. And that's no disrespect, guys. That's just how it is. So those are the pages you can find me at. You can follow those pages, Knights of the Nephilim, Celestial Oddities Radio, Celestial Oddities Paraseekers, and the Coterie of Samil on multiple platforms. We release different evidence. And of course, our radio shows, lastly. Under Celestial Oddities Radio, we have a plethora of different shows The main one I think that would interest you guys is Knights of the Nephilim, where we bring on some of the biggest and best occultists in the world, interview them, and deep dive into discussions. Aleister will be coming on in a few weeks, making his third appearance, I believe. And we're very, very excited and honored to have him coming back on. And then we also have a show called Caniculum Obscuritatis, which means the obscure tunnels. And that's a reference to the Klepoth. And it's a way of building a practice from the ground up. We just finished season 1. It was the basics of magic, the basis of structure and forming discipline. Season 2 will go a little bit more into that. And by the time we reach season 3, we'll be deep diving into some radical shit. So you can check me out on all those things. And I would really appreciate your like, share, follow, and subscribe clicks, guys.
I'll put the links down there. Everybody can check those out. And Frater Crow, thank you for spending time with me tonight. I always look forward to these little get-togethers. I'm looking forward to being on your show again. So thank you.
No, thank you as well, brother. It was an honor to come back on the show. It's always great talking with you. I'm excited to have you on my show here coming up. And once again, just thank you for the opportunity.
And those watching, thank you for being a part of this. Until next time, this has been Aleister Nacht. Ave Satanas.